Hello and welcome to the PhD Life Raft podcast. I'm Emma Brzezinski and today I am talking to the awesome Samir Morsli. We are talking about internships as part of the PhD process, and we talk about the pros and cons of that. And we also talk about Samir's love affair with zebrafish. So I do hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, Samir.
Hey.
This is so lovely, and I'm so grateful. I've just said to you, I'm really grateful that you just responded to this random person emailing you saying, will you talk about your internship experience? And you were very generously said, yeah, of course. So thank you so much for that.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Thanks for the invite.
I'm always so appreciative of people giving up their precious time to talk about their experiences, because I know that it's really helpful for other people.
Sure.
And as I just said to you, I think I'd asked people what they wanted to have podcast episodes on, and the idea of PhD internships came up, and so I was really keen to sort of serve that need or desire. So that's what we're going to get into.
Right.
But before that, I'm going to ask the question that I asked to everybody in terms of, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your journey into the PhD and out the other side?
Sure. Yeah. So it's quite a fun story. It's nice reliving this period. So I went through. I was at the University of Sheffield for the whole shebang actually, and did an undergrad in biomedical science. And at that point was just in love with understanding about human disease and how we're trying to improve people's quality of life. So I at that point was quite interested in pursuing a PhD, but my grades weren't really good enough in my final year to be allowed to do a research project, which was part of the third year for the top students. Right. But I overcame that and volunteered in a summer in a summer period with a lecturer that I knew previously, and spent the summer with them, got some research experience, and then went and did a master's in translational oncology instead. So more about cancer research and the translation from bench to bedside, as they say.
Wow.
So that involved a 6-month research project as well in the University of Sheffield, where I started my love for working with zebrafish, which is my model organism.
The love for zebrafish.
Yeah. So the lecturer who used to teach us about zebrafish and their use as a model organism for understanding basic biology of the immune system. He was called Stephen Renshaw, and I had quite a good rapport with him. I liked him a lot as a lecturer, and I kept in contact with him after my undergrad. And essentially, during this master's period, I applied for a lot of PhDs, had a lot of interviews, and I was feeling a bit of despair, sort of not knowing, because I wasn't getting through to the point that I wanted to. I was getting good comments, but other people were slightly getting ahead of me.
Right.
And one evening, I remember being on the phone to my mum, and she was like, "Oh, what about this lecturer that you really like, Steve Renshaw?" So I was like, "Yeah, I best drop him an email." And weirdly enough, when I got off the phone from my mum, I'd got an email from him inviting me to go to a PhD. Yeah, which was literally the following day.
Synchronicity.
So it was very odd. And this was about using zebrafish, but more in the context of aging, studying this cellular response to stress called senescence. So I went and interviewed for that literally the next day. I was doing my lectures in the day for my master's, and then I had my suit in my bag.
Wow.
So and got the position. So that was great. I started in 2015 and had a 4-year internship PhD which was with the BBSRC White Rose DTP, doctoral training program. And as part of that, they had mandatory internship requirement. So that sort of led to me having the internship, but I'm extremely glad that we had that component of the PhD.
Right. Yes, because for some places there's a kind of option to, and as you say, in some places you have to. And I think then some people think, shall I actually apply for this because I don't know if I want the internship or not.
Yeah.
And so amazing. And so and we're going to come into that experience and what that was like, and then what happened, and then just tell us the next bits for you after that PhD experience. Where are you now?
So now I'm at the University of Cambridge, which is quite close to where I did my internship, actually. So I was sort of familiar with the place, and now I'm at the Early Cancer Institute, working in the Munoz Espin lab, where we study the role of these senescent cells in the initiation and progression of lung cancer. Wow, so that's where I am now. I've been here since the start of 2021, so it's coming up on 3 years now. There was a bit of a rocky period in between finishing the PhD, as I'm sure most people had with COVID, where I sort of had a couple of short postdoc extensions from my PhD, but then was furloughed a lot. But we made it through the other side.
Amazing. And what I love about your story, I love the shout out, because we always love a shout out to people, and especially also a shout out to your mum as well. Mums know, right? Yeah. Mums know.
Yeah, she do.
But also this sense of it wasn't necessarily an easy road, and there were a lot of applications, but that sense of tenacity and knowing that you were in love with zebrafish, you wanted to do this work. And this kind of tenacity, which has served you well. So I love that part of the story, and that then you're ending up doing the work that you love doing. And that's not true for everybody, but I think what's important to remember, especially when you're at a place where you think it's not really working for me just now, that sense of kind of things can change, things can shift. So amazing for all of that. So now we can jump back then into this internship experience, which was a mandatory experience. Tell us a little bit about how that kind of evolved and what it was like.
Sure. So even though it was mandatory, it was very flexible in how you could do it. I think the period of the PhD was 4 years funded, but the internship was around 3 months, and it could be taken at any point during the PhD. But it took me some time to get settled with the research and things like that. So I ended up arranging it at the end of my 3rd year, which I think was quite a good time. I sort of was confident in my work. I'd got some results, and it was, and I also needed a slight change of scenery, a bit of a break to come back with a fresh mind.
I think that
it was very useful for that as well.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that really good advice in terms of that sense of, because, and I love what you said there in terms of getting some results, because what you don't want to do is be away and be fretting, I'm behind, I'm not doing the thing. So the sense of getting to a place where you feel confident in the work that you're doing, and as you say, it gives you a break, it gives you a whole different energy. I think that's what I've heard from other people who have done internships. But tell us about your internship. Tell us about yours. So it was 3rd year.
Yeah, so it's 3rd year, and you can arrange it with anyone you want, as long as it's not to do with the current research that you're doing now. So this is what I mean by it being really, really flexible.
Right.
So in terms of my decisions in the run up to it, I was sort of questioning myself, what type of thing do I think I'm good at? What strengths do I have outside of research? One being that I'm quite a chatty person, quite sociable person, and I like talking about research to my friends and my family. So I was thinking of that perhaps something to do with science communication and public engagement could be something that I might find useful, and maybe even a potential career path in the future.
Yes.
So I was sort of taking these into account. And I was at a conference. So the first conference I went to my PhD, which was at the Wellcome Genome campus near Cambridge. And I think it was here where I met who was going to then be my my boss in my internship. She's called Tacita Croucher, and she runs the public engagement division at Abraham at the time. I'm not sure she's still there actually, but yeah. So I met her there. I was using my chatty, sociable personality to network, and she actually had gone to university in Sheffield as well and was giving a talk in Sheffield. So when she came to visit, she sort of gave me an informal interview in Sheffield, and then I went to visit the department and a more formal interview. So it was more like an official job process.
Right.
And they thought it would be useful for us to carry out this internship where I worked in the public engagement department of the Abraham Institute.
I think what's useful about that, what you're saying there, is I think it's not like doing work experience from school, is it?
No.
And you kind of go, oh, just trot off and have a look around. That actually, and what can be brilliant about it, isn't it, is that it can be a kind of trial run, that you do get that experience of making contact with someone, going through that process, and developing relationships. Amazing. So that process was sounds like it was quite a pleasant one.
Yeah,
for you.
It was indeed. Yeah, I appreciated the experience in terms of getting it myself. It felt like something that I'd earned.
Yes.
And yeah, it was great. So I sort of packed up my bench work and moved down to Cambridge to work at the Abraham Institute. We got stuck right in straight away. I remember they had like weekly meetings on a Monday morning, and they said, right, we're going to school, like some primary schools nearby on Thursday. So Samir, you're going to help running these classes and things like that. So they really put me in the deep end, and it was I remember being terrified, but it was great to get really stuck in.
Amazing.
So the side of there were sort of three main things that I was involved with in that internship, and I ended up staying nearer to 4 months actually than 3, because I was really enjoying it, and it was running up to Christmas anyway. So the first was to work with schools and show them so it depended on the level. With primary schools, we'd sort of get them engaged in science and show them how to extract DNA from a strawberry and things like this, and show them about different sound frequencies and where the kids can start hearing the high frequencies, where to myself I couldn't hear it because I'm slightly older than them. And things like that. So that was very exciting. We went to different schools, but I also worked with sixth form students as well, where I was more developing resources about showing almost showcasing the research that they do at the Abraham Institute, which is predominantly around aging research, and understanding the processes of what happens when we get older. And a lot of it is to do with the immune system and epigenetics. So what happens to which genes are being switched on and off, and how that changes over time. Wow. So with the sixth form students, I was more developing teaching resources and things like that.
Right.
So it was very interesting that it was extremely different job depending on the audience that we're aiming for.
Yes. Yes.
Additionally, we also looked at there was as part of Horizon Europe, which I believe we're back in now.
We're back in today.
Yes. It's brilliant news.
Who knew that being in a European organisation was a good idea? Who knew that?
I know. You could never have guessed, could you? But as part of them, they have something called the European Researchers Night, I think, something along that. And the Cambridge leg of that was called Life Lab, where we went out and did lots of activities in Cambridge and nearby in Peterborough. So that was great, like really face to face with the public, families just out on the day out. I remember reading stories to young kids in the library, to get them passionate and excited about science. It was great. I remember some of them grammatically correcting me, which is quite funny. But yeah, so there was that side of it. And the third was actually developing these teaching resources to be available online for people to use. So that's on the Abraham website now under teaching resources. So Yeah, those were the sort of three aspects that I covered, and I loved it really. I enjoyed disseminating the science, and it was a really good learning process for me, and showed that there's something I could do if academia doesn't work out, which I was being told is quite possible.
Right.
But at the moment, I'm keeping my tenacity and continue to try it out.
You're staying in. But I think this sense of an opportunity, as you say, to explore something kind of tangential to your work, I think can be a really precious part of that internship experience, can't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And being able to develop professional skills, as we're always being told this is good to do, but it is good to do, right? It is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think having that sense of from what I can hear, that what excited you is about that kind of connection with the real world and with the public, and that sense of kind of being energized by seeing how the work that you were doing has an impact. Because I think on a PhD journey, that can become really difficult in that kind of that messy middle into that final stage where you're like, what am I even doing here?
Yeah, you get so stuck in your small little area, and and it can be really good to see the big picture again, and it's very motivating. And I mean, even staying in academia now has still been an extremely useful experience. I remember taking, after the internship, I ran a seminar where I was sort of teaching people back in Sheffield about public engagement, other researchers, and was invited to give a talk on the topic in a conference. And so I've really taken in those skills, even though having not necessarily gone into public engagement full time or yet anyway. I think it's still been an extremely valuable experience.
So we've given a very positive spin, and we've said all the good things. I'm just wondering if there's anything that you were like, not so good, or I'd do it differently next time.
Yeah, it's a good question. So what was quite interesting was that I though I loved that dissemination of research on that side of it, I wasn't so enthused about just solely doing the public research, and I suppose talking about other people's research that they're doing. Right. I really missed actually being a part of doing the research as well.
Right.
So that was a learning point for me, and that I'm not sure whether I would do it full time as a career personally, because I really missed the research side of it as well, where you're actually cracking these questions and finding out unknown things. That was a big learning point for me as well. It's something I also realized that even though it wasn't quite right for me in terms of career, it still was an important lesson to learn that as well.
It's like we say, it's the flip side of it, isn't it? That you might try something out and go, I never ever want to do that again. But I have done it now.
Exactly.
It sounds like that wasn't exactly what it is for you, but actually I think also, and I know it's happened for other people, it gives what you call desk hunger. Is actually you're like, I want to get back to my research now. I'm really excited about that, kind of getting back in and diving back in and getting this PhD done.
Yeah, totally.
But I think it's worth knowing that it could be quite a tricky thing to come out of your research and be away from that.
Yeah, the timing was important.
Yes.
And even while away, even though, like I said, I had results and stuff, I was in the back of my mind that, oh God, I've only got a year left to finish. I mean, maybe in retrospect, I would have tried to get things done a bit faster and then taken the break slightly earlier,
right,
to have a bit more time, or to have finished everything before writing and then had it then, or something like that, perhaps. That's
really interesting, isn't it? I think, as you say, I think the timing is quite delicate, and I think that well, as you say, you met someone at a conference and then things evolve from there, and that is often how things happen. But it's worth just thinking about how this fits with the flow of your work.
Totally.
Which is not always easy to know on a PhD, let's be honest.
No.
But it's I think that kind of having that conversation with yourself and the potential placement can be really useful, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
But overall, this is very positive. I'm liking this.
I'm glad, yeah. I'm glad to talk positively about it.
So would you have any advice then? It's because we're always at the end of the episode. I always unfairly ask people for top tips, which of course is not good. But what sort of advice would you have for people who are thinking about doing an internship or about to engage in an internship?
Sure. I would say look into yourself and think about what type of person you are, what your what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then maybe tailor it towards that. And it could be, but either in the sense of taking advantage of your strengths, which is, I suppose, sort of what I did, but also it could be trying to address a weakness that you would like to maybe tackle or turn into a strength. So I think that's it's important to be reflective and take the time to think, and also to speak to lots of people, try and find people that have had experience in it. I mean, I'd be happy to talk to people myself if that was helpful.
Yes.
But yeah, also supervisors, there are people in public engagement departments for me in Sheffield where I was talking to them about their job. Talk to people, network, and try and think about what type of things could be useful for you based on your strengths and your weaknesses.
That's golden. And we will have your details in the show notes.
Sure.
I'm sure you're getting inundated now, and you're welcome. Thank you for that. But I think it reminds me of, we had someone, David Mendes was on the podcast talking about kind of having a chat with people while you're a PhD researcher, having a chat with people about the work that they do, the jobs that they do, to do that kind of thought experiment of, would this be something that's interesting for me? Is this the right thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, because it's actually a process of self-reflection and of knowing yourself and what really will, you'll be able to shine in or work to develop skills in. Samir, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
This has been a true joy. What a lovely interviewee you are. What else can I interview about? This is what I'm asking myself. But thank you so much for your time and for that insight, because I think it is a bit mysterious. I think the internship.
Yeah, I felt like that too.
Yeah, so I think it's really useful to sort of open that up. And of course, people are going to have very different experiences, but I think that the sense of what the process might be like and the sort of things you might do are so helpful. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you all for listening.